The Celtic Twilight by W.B. Yeats, and I lost my file, so we're doing this one again. Dust hath closed Helen's eye. Because I was recording it, and for some reason it didn't. It just exited out of the program and didn't save. I have been lately to a little group of houses, not many enough to be called a village, in the barony of Kiltartan, in County Galway, whose name Ballylee is known throughout all the west of Ireland. There is the old square castle, Ballylee, inhabited by a farmer and his wife, and a cottage where their daughter and their son-in-law live, and a little mill with an old miller, and old ash trees throwing green shadows upon a little river, and great stepping stones. And I went there 2 or 3 times last year to talk to the miller about Biddy Early, a wise woman that lived in Clare some years ago, and about her saying, there's a cure for all evil between the 2 mill wheels of Ballylee, and to find out from him or another whether she meant the moss between the running waters or some other herb. I have been there this summer, and I shall be there again before it is autumn, because Mary Hines, a beautiful woman, whose name is still a wonder by turf fires, died there 60 years ago. For our feet would linger where beauty has lived its life of sorrow, to make us understand that it is not of the world. Well, the good of this world is certainly a gift of the spiritual worlds, in a way of saying. An old man brought me a little way from the mill and the castle, and down a long, narrow boreen, which was nearly lost in brambles and slow bushes, and he said, that is the little old foundation of the house, but most of it is taken for building walls, and the goats have ate those bushes that are growing over it till they've got cranky, and they won't grow any more. They say that she was the handsomest girl in Ireland. Her skin was like dribbled snow. He meant driven snow, perhaps. And she had blushes in her cheeks. She had 5 handsome brothers, but all are gone now. I talked to him about a poem in Irish Raftery, a famous poet, made about her, and how it said, there's a strong cellar in Ballylee. He said the strong cellar was the great hole where the river sank underground, and he brought me to a deep pool where an otter hurried away under a gray boulder, and told me that many fish came up out of the dark water at early morning to taste the fresh water coming down from the hills. I first heard of the poem from an old woman who lives about 2 miles further up the river, and who remembers Raftery and Mary Hines. She says, I never saw anybody so handsome as she was, and I never will till I die. And that he was nearly blind, and had no way of living, to go round and to mark some house to go on to. And then all the neighbors would gather to hear. If you treated him well, he'd praise you, but if you did not, he'd fault you in Irish. He was the greatest poet in Ireland, and he made a song about that, and he'd make a song about that bush, if he chanced to stand under it. There was a bush he stood under from the rain, and he made verses praising it, and then, when the water came through, he made verses dispraising it. She sang the poem to a friend, and to myself in Irish, and every word was audible and expressive, as the words in the song were always, as I think, before music grew too proud to be the garment of words, flowing and changing, with the flowing and changing of their energies. Now, one of the things nowadays is that we have, this is song language, and it's like, yeah, song. Some people can't have any better grasp of language than the songs, and the songs, by that I mean, it's, broken whatever language, not terribly coherent, a lot of it. The poem is not as natural as the best Irish poetry of the last century. For the thoughts, the century before last now, right? Because this is an extra 100 years. Well, more than, 100. What year was this? But 1902 was the second edition of the book, I guess. So it'd be 117 years, but I don't remember what the other year is. For the thoughts are arranged in a too obviously traditional form, so the old, poor, half-blind man who made it has to speak as if he were a rich farmer offering the best of everything to the woman he loves. But it has naive and tender phrases. The friend that was with me has made some of the translation, but some of it has been made by the country people themselves. I think it has more of the simplicity of the Irish verse than one finds in most translations. And, well, love of the body, definitely. Other than beauty and niceness, I'm not really sure what good they're saying about her, but going to Mass by the will of God, the day came wet and the wind rose. I met Mary Hines at the cross of Kiltartan, and I fell in love with her then and there. I spoke to her kindly and mannerly, as by report was her own way. And she said, Raftery, my mind is easy. Ye may come today to Ballylee. And when I heard her offer, I did not linger. When her talk went to my heart rose. And we had only to go across the 3 fields. We had daylight with us to Ballylee. The table was laid with glasses and a quart measure. She had fair hair, and she sitting besides me. And she said, Drink Raftery, and 100 welcomes. There is a strong cellar in Ballylee. O star of light, and O sun in harvest, O amber hair, O my share of the world, will you come with me upon Sunday? Till we agree together before all the people, I would not grudge you a song every Sunday evening, punch on the table or wine if you would drink it. But O King of glory, dry the roads before me, till I find the way to Ballylee. There is sweet air on the side of the hill, when you are looking down upon Ballylee, when you are walking in the valley, picking nuts and blackberries. There is music of the birds in it, and music of the Sidhe. Yeah, until you witness some of what happens with the unseen, you don't really know what it's like. What is the worth of the greatness? What is the worth of greatness till you have the light of the flower, of the branch that is by your side? There is no God to deny it or try to hide it. She is the sun in the heavens who wounded my heart. There was no part of Ireland I did not travel, from the rivers to the tops of the mountains, to the edge of the Lugh Grain, whose mouth is hidden, and I saw no beauty but was behind hers. Her hair was shining, and her brows were shining too. Her face was like herself, her mouth pleasant and sweet. She is the pride, and I gave her the branch. She is the shining flower of Ballylee. It is Mary Hines, the calm and easy woman, has beauty in her mind and in her face. If 100 clerks were gathered together, they could not write down half of her ways. And easy to get along with is the phrase, right? An old weaver whose son is supposed to go away among the Sidhe, the fairies at night, says, Mary Hines was the most beautiful thing ever made. My mother used to tell me about her, for she'd be at every hurling, and wherever she was dressed in white, As many as 11 men asked her in marriage in one day, but she wouldn't have any of them. There was a lot of men up beyond Kilbecanty one night, sitting together drinking and talking of her. And one of them got up and set out to go to Ballylee and see her. But Clun Bog was open then, and when he came to it he fell into the water, and they found him dead there in the morning. She died of the fever that was before the famine. Another old man says he was only a child when he saw her, but he remembered that the strongest man that was among us, one John Madden, got his death of the head of her. Cold, he got crossing rivers in the night time to get to Ballylee. This is perhaps the man the other remembered, for tradition gives the one thing many shapes. There is an old woman who remembers her at Derry Breen, among the Echtge hills, a vast, desolate place which has changed little since the old poem said, "The stag upon the cold summit of Echtge hears the cry of the wolves." But still, mindful of the many poems and of the dignity of ancient speech, she says, the sun and the moon never shone on anybody so handsome, and her skin was so white that it looked blue, and she had 2 little blushes on her cheeks. And an old wrinkled woman who lives close by Ballylee, and has told me many tales of the city, says, "I often saw Mary Hines. She was handsome indeed. She had 2 bunches of curls besides her cheeks, and they were the color of silver. I saw Mary Malloy, that was drowned in the river beyond, and Mary Guthrie, that was in Ardrahan. But she took the sway of them both, a very comely creature. I was at her wake too. She had seen too much of the world. She was a kind creature. One day I was coming home through that field beyond, and I was tired, and who should come out but the poison Glegial, the shining flower, and she gave me a glass of new milk. This old woman meant no more than some beautiful bright color by the color of silver, for though I knew an old man, he is dead now, who thought she might know the cure for all the evils in the world that the Siddha knew. She has seen too little gold to know its color, but a man by the shore at Kinvara, who is too young to remember Mary Hines, says, everybody says there is no one at all to be seen now so handsome. It is said she had beautiful hair, the color of gold. She was poor, but her clothes every day were the same as Sunday. She had such neatness, and if she went to any kind of a meeting, they would all be killing one another for a sight of her. And there was a great many in love with her, but she died young. It is said that no one that has a song made about them will ever live long. Those who were much admired are, it is held, taken by the Siddha, who can use ungoverned feeling for their own ends, so that a father, as an old herb doctor told me once, may give his child into their hands, or a husband his wife. The admired and desired are only safe if one says, God bless them, and one's eyes are upon them. The old woman that sang the song thinks, too, that Mary Hines was taken, as the phrase is, for they have taken many that are not handsome, and why would they not take her? And people came from all parts to look at her, and maybe there were some that did not say, God bless her. An old man who lives by the sea at Duras has little doubt that she was taken, for there are some living yet can remember her coming to the pattern there beyond, and she was said to be the handsomest girl in Ireland. She died young because the gods loved her, for the city are the gods, and it may be that the old saying, which we forget to understand literally, meant her manner of death in old times. Well, certainly the jinn, the male and female entities that, well, they're psychological projections too, but are the things that people treat as gods in many cultures. Saying which we forget to understand literally meant her manner of death in old times. These poor countrymen and countrywomen in their beliefs and in their emotions are many years nearer to that old Greek world that set beauty beside the fountain of things than are men of learning. A pattern or patron is a festival in honor of a saint. She had seen too much of the world, but these old men and women, when they tell of her, blame another and not her, and though they can be hard, they grow gentle, as the old men of Troy grew gentle when Helen passed by on the walls. The poet who had helped her to so much fame has given himself a great fame throughout the west of Ireland. Some think that Raftery was half blind, and I say, I saw Raftery, a dark man, but he had sight enough to see her, or the like. But some think he was wholly blind, as he may have been at the end of his life. Fable makes all things perfect in their kind, and her blind people must never look on the world and the sun. I asked a man I met one day when I was looking for a pool, na Side, where women of Fari have been seen, and how Raftery could have admired Mary Hines so much if he had been altogether blind. Yeah, I live within an hour drive of a place where it's believed that Native Americans went to fornicate in the water or something like that, and I'm like, well, maybe it wasn't natives, it was maybe spirits or there's really broken mythology in much of the Western world, because well, much of America in particular. Okay, anyways, how Raftery could have admired Mary Hines so much if he had been altogether blind. He said, I think Raftery was altogether blind, but those that are blind have a way of seeing things and have the power to know more and to feel more and to do more and to guess more than those that have their sight, and a certain wit and a certain wisdom is given to them. Everybody indeed will tell you that he was very wise, for he was not only blind, but a poet, the weaver whose words about Mary Hines I have already given, says, his poetry was the gift of the Almighty, for there are three things that are the gift of the Almighty, poetry and dancing and principles. That is why in the old times an ignorant man coming down from the hillside will be better behaved and have better learning than a man with education you'd meet now, for they got it from God. And a man at Coule says, when he put his finger into one part of his head, everything would come out to him as if it was written in a book. And an old pensioner at Kiltartan says, he was standing under a bush one time, and he talked to it, and he answered him back in Irish. Some say it was the bush that spoke, but it must have been an enchanted voice in it, and it gave him the knowledge of all the things in the world, or so he thought, right? The bush withered up afterwards, and it is to be seen of the roadside now, between this and Rahasine. There is a poem of his about a bush, which I have never seen, and it may have come out of the cauldron of fable in this shape. A friend of mine met a man once who had been with him when he died, but the people say that he died alone. And would have Martin Gillan told Dr. Hyde that all night long a light was seen streaming up to heaven from the roof of the house where he lay, and that was the angels who were with him. And all night long there was a great light in the hovel, and that was the angels who were waking him. They gave that honor to him because he was so good a poet and sang such religious songs. It may be that in a few years Fable, who changes mortalities to immortalities in her cauldron, will have changed Mary Hines and Raftery to perfect symbols of the sorrow and beauty and of the magnificence and penury of dreams. And, it's the 1900, and the 1902 section is, when I was in a northern town a while ago, I had a long talk with a man who had lived in a neighboring country district when he was a boy. He told me that when a very beautiful girl was born in a family that had not been noted for good looks, her beauty was thought to have come from the city, and to bring misfortune with it. He went over the names of several beautiful girls that he had known, and said that beauty had never brought happiness to anyone. It was a thing, he said, to be proud of and afraid of. I wish I had written out his words at the time, for they were more picturesque than my memory of them. And let's seek refuge in regards to the evil eye.